So now I just open up the Epic Games launcher, and then let's just launch a 5.5 Unreal Engine version. And then we click on Games, third person, and no starter content, okay? We call this one Silent Hill Course and create. So this is our third person template. We can just create a new level, a get empty level. We create this one, and then we can just save current level as, and then we click on third person maps, third person map, and save. Good. And then so this is like completely pitch black. So what we can do is first we import our terrain. So make a new folder inside your content folder, and we call this one terrain. Open that one up, and we get our, we get the Silent Hill terrain. So this is like 10 megabytes in size, perfectly fine. No textures, no materials. Okay, so make sure that a source name for asset, yes, but no texture and no material. Import. Then just drag and drop, and make sure that the location is on 0, 0, and 0. And you can just lock the scale as well. Yeah, let me rotate this. So just make sure it's snapping is enabled. And 90 degrees, minus 90. So snapping, you can disable and enable the snapping here. This is snapping the scale, and this is snapping the location. Okay. So now we don't have any lighting, so we can't see anything. So like the standard approach is, you can click on Environment Light Mixer. You create a skylight, directional light, atmosphere, volumetric crowd, and height fog. So pretty simple. And then at the same time, you can also go to height fog, scroll down, and use the volumetric fog. So this is like a simple approach. And then you can also control L, and then you can just rotate the sun. So, and then when we see, we should have a player start. Let's get a player start. Where is it? Let's search for player, move it. So now it says bad size. The reason why that is probably because of collision. You can click on this mesh, open up the mesh here. So click on this binocular on the right side, click on this mesh. And then you can see remove collision. Just remove the collision here. And then you are going to use the complex. Collision complexity, use complex S simple. And save. This is pretty important. So now we are back, and if you can't see the cage, press G. And then click on this one here. And now, this arrow here, we should just change to something here. And now you can see also the bad size is gone, and we have proper collision. So yeah, this is perfect. Just to make sure, we have third-person template. So when you go to Edit, and you go to Project Settings, and then you click on Maps and Modes, you can see that our default game mode is our Blueprint third-person game. What does it mean? When we click on this binocular here, you can see that this is our character. So this is the default mannequin. And this is our game mode. This means he is using this blueprint. And when we open this blueprint up and you click on View, Window, and then Viewport, then you can see we are using this guy, this girl here. You can also just change this to Quinn if you want. And of course, later we will switch this character. So, sorry, Manny, simple. So we can just change this to this guy if you want to. But later we are going to change the character. We will also apply some animations and some controls. So just like get this Silent Hill vibe, basically. Good. So just for you to understand how this third-person game mode template is working, then you can press play, and then you can see, now you get a feel of this terrain. Okay, so you can see here, this is perfectly straight, but as we come here, it's not really straight anymore. And you can see those creases, so then we can apply maybe like a rock texture or something. So we're gonna use mud, rock, and grass, I believe. So this is something we should use. Okay, good. If you want to, you can also, if this is not really close enough, you can also go to the mannequin, so characters. No, sorry, it was not third person, blueprints. Open up the blueprint, go to the viewport, so window and then viewport here. And you have a camera. And you can just get this a little closer, maybe like so. Then also you can just make this a little higher. Maybe just put this a little bit to the right side and compile and save. Now you have something like this. If you want to have this. So yeah, now it looks more like atmospheric and stuff. And now we can fill the scene. Before we do that, so before we start actually to model like buildings and stuff like that, and then we get like a nice terrain texture, and then we scatter assets. We're using like some additional cliff texture, maybe some stones here, just to make this more bumpy and more interesting. We can, or we should now, use some block out ideas. So this is what basically most people do, blocking out things. So before I do that, let me just change the lighting, because I think this is pretty boring, right? So we just use the window light mixer, environment light mixer, and we just applied a directional light, height fog, sky atmosphere, skylight, volumetric cloud. But you can also use a different approach. So delete those 5 things. And then what we do, we save, we go to plugins, and then you apply HDRI. You click on HDRI and we restart, okay? Okay, so now this is mandatory for having like good HDRI lighting. So this is a much better lighting. This gives you a much better result, a more realistic result, I should say. Before we proceed, let's also go to project setting and search for lumen. So and we want to make sure that the software ray tracing mode, change this to detail tracing. So make sure that the reflection is lumen and the dynamic global illumination is lumen. And we want to have ray traced shadows for now. Okay, so finally we're back, and it took us some time. This is pretty normal because we did change a bunch of stuff now. You can click on the plus and get the lights HDRI backdrop, and then you have by default HDRI. This is a default cube map. You can just change location, and we want to have like a different HDRI because this doesn't look really nice. It's not really fitting. What you can do, let's create a new folder. We call this one HDRI. Open that one up. And I already went on Polyhaven and I got myself a free HDRI, which is called Overcast Soil Pure Sky. I will just import that. This is just an overcast cube map. So we can just drag this inside here into our HDRI cube map. And then you see nothing is really going to change regarding our terrain, right? So if I just press play, you can see this looks horrible. We can fix that by going out. You can increase the size to something like 5,000. Then our HDRI is big enough to catch all those surfaces here and cast light on our plane. All right. And then what we also can do is we get a post-process volume. So under visual effects, post-process volume. And then you can just get the infinite and extend unbound. Enable this. This means that this whole thing is now affecting the whole environment. And let's make sure that our HDRI backdrop here is location on a 0. The X is the Y is also 0, and so everything is 0, which is perfectly fine for the HDRI. And then the post-process volume we can also 0, 0, and 0. So everything is in the center, except for the player start, of course. So the reason why I put in a post-process volume is because this gives me the ability to click on exposure, and we get the min and max EV. So let's try for 8 and 8. So now this is really dark. But the good thing is you have to consider the EV is a so-called eye adaptation. This means when we just have a fixed value of 8 and 8 for min and max, this means that our eye vision, like the eye adaptation of the brightness, when you go outside or you go inside like a building, you go outside, then everything gets bright. Our eye adapts to the brightness of the light casting. And we just want to have this as a fixed value, and this is one way we can do that. And when we just increase the EV, we get a more realistic approach. So when we just go back to the HDRI backdrop and we can increase maybe the intensity to something like 100, then we are back and have like some nice lighting here. Maybe this is a bit too much, let's do 75. So this is maybe okay. And then at the same time, we can also go to the skylight. So our HDRI has already a skylight. And we can use the SLS specified cube map. And he's asking for the cube map. So you can just drag it here as well. And then you can increase the intensity to maybe something like 20, 25. So just step by step, and maybe 50 and maybe 75. So now you can see that our cube map regarding the skylight is now reflecting more accurately what's like in harmony with our skybox, because it's the same cube map. And use the SLS specified cube map. All right, you can also, if you want to, change the cube map source angle. For this sky, it's not really necessary because we have even lighting. So there's not really sunlight coming from one direction. So basically there was the sun, but we don't really have like directional light on this. It's a really soft light. So this means like changing the angle will not really have an impact. So this is why for us this is enough. So now we can also add function here. We can also get a directional light. Let's get this to 0, 0, and 0. And then you can increase the intensity to maybe something like 50, and then Control L, and then you can just change also the lighting here. And then if you want to really make it pop out, let's do something crazy, 500. So now, here's a good example. Now you see that this mesh, let's just disable the nanite first. So, because we cannot use nanite for vertex painting later, we click on this mesh, terrain, nanite, and we just disable the nanite. So this is just one thing, we can fix that. There's like another thing you can do, since we are using ray traced shadows, you can type in r dot and then ray tracing shadows, enable two-sided geometry, and then 0, enter. So the thing is, when you have a console command, you always have to, when you reopen it, you always have to retype this. You always have to use this command every single time you open up your project. This is pretty annoying, but you can also just get this command and copy and paste this into your .ini file. So basically you have also like an ini file inside your Unreal Engine folder. Let me just show you really quick. Config, and then you have this one called default engine. So default engine, and then you can just put this one here in between this command I just gave you, and then with the value of 0. Okay. And then you don't need to change it all the time. All right, so now let's press Control L again, and let's change the sun. So now we can see where the sun is. So we have like a little bit of like extra directional light. If you want to, let's do to 1000. So now you can see this is pretty strong. You can also increase the source angle if you want to get softer shadows. Let's do maybe 8, 5. There, let's do 5. Or 6 maybe. You also can use temperature if you want to, like make this cold, warm, or cold if you want. So yeah, let's do 8000, and then let's do 1000 intensity, maybe 750, and then you can also get a visual effects and then exponential height fork. And for the exponential height fork, as I told you before, volumetric fork, enable this, and then you can maybe get 0.1 in fork density. And then you can increase the scattering distribution. So the scattering distribution and also the extinction scale, I will show you in a bit, is interacting with the directional light. All right. So if you do more scattering distribution, this is more affecting the sun. So maybe you should have a mix. So I think this is pretty boring, but this is really strong. So maybe you should have something like this, maybe 0.5. And extinction scale. So this means like how strong the fork will distribute, or maybe just a tiny bit. Okay, so this is already something we can have. And then at the same time, when you go to the HDRI, now you have the ability, when you fix the intensity here, since we changed this skylight to a specified cube map, so now this means this one is separate. So we can now only change the sky intensity without affecting our terrain or our assets. So you can go crazy here if you want. You see, so this, let's do 2500 maybe, or let's do 1500. So now this looks like much more realistic, if you ask me. Of course, we don't have textures, so it's pretty useless to try it now, but just for you to understand, now you can change how much light will be absorbed by the skylight when you change this intensity here in your skylight. So of course, it depends on our materials as well, but you can also just increase this. This should harmonize with your sky. So if this is, for example, like the terrain is giving you so much light, it's not really fitting with the skylight brightness. So you should have something, maybe something like this. And the skylight, so HDRI backdrop, the HDRI backdrop, the sky should have something similar. So this is pretty dark, but I think 750 is good. And then skylight, maybe let's do 75. Or maybe, yeah, let's do 60, 75. So now you can see this is a little better. And you can also really go crazy with the fork if you want to. So no fork. just a little bit of fog. Let's do 0.1. And then we can test things out here. And now we have HDRI lighting. Now you can see it looks much better. All right. So this is it for setting up this Unreal Engine scene and just setting up basic fog lighting. And in the next lecture, we will just block out things. So we can decide when we model buildings in Blender that we will just use a couple of cubes and cylinders and stuff, and maybe some things here. And so we can just block out things just to get an idea where we place like what kind of items or what kind of assets.